Good afternoon and welcome to Just Jocelyn. I'm so glad that you could join us. As you see, I have my co-host and guest today, Miss Karen Testerman. And as usual, we are here to stir the pot. We are here to raise the roof. We are here to make the bees buzz, whatever you want to say. The topic for this show is election validation. What does that mean? Well, we all assume you sign up, I want to be a Democrat, I want to be a Republican, I want to be independent. And on the day of election, you walk in and they check your name off and you give them your license because you're there. And then they check your name off another list and they put a line through it. As a ballot clerk, I know this. And then they hand you the appropriate ballot and you go around and you vote. When you're done voting, you go out and you put it either into a box, which constitutionally by the state of New Hampshire, it should never, ever go through a machine because A, we never voted on it, B, we never changed the Constitution, and C, we never said that our money could pay for it. Just saying. So it goes and it gets counted. And you get the numbers at the end of the night and we assume everything's hunky-dory. Well, everybody's tossing around election fraud and this and that and blah, blah. It's actually true. Why? Well, number one, the machines are not constitutional. Well, Jocelyn, this is 2023. Well, people, citizens and voters, maybe we should have changed the Constitution to reflect it's 2023 and made it so that they could use the machines. But we didn't, but they didn't, and they brought them in. We also have another problem. Well, my boss won't let me get off to vote, and I don't have anybody to watch my kids, and the dog ate my car keys, and we're sick and there's some fake pandemic going on. Whatever the excuse is, we had absentee ballots. Well, again, constitutionally, ballots were for only two reasons. Severely disabled, or you were out of the country. It then became out of the state, usually due to military, but those are the only two reasons. And at the bottom of this little affidavit is, on the bottom of the ballot is an affidavit. Supposed to be. That's the way it was. Well, then they came along and we had to have another exemption. It was a religious exemption. So what did they do? They wiped off the affidavit at the bottom where you swear the person signing it is you, and you go to a bank or the town hall or wherever and it's notarized. That's the way it was always done. But they took that away and they stuck the little religious exemption on there. So now there's not an affidavit. Well, Jocelyn, it comes sent to our house, so it must be legit. Have you listened to the news lately? Have you seen how many people have moved and the change of address wasn't registered and their name wasn't taken off and put in the new town? These are problems. So now people request their absentee ballot and it's sent to them. And by the way, you're not allowed to ask for an ID. But if I want to vote and I show up, I have to show an ID. But absentee ballot people don't. So they're signing it somewhere in their basement, the bathroom, I don't know, in the kitchen, stuffing it in an envelope and mailing it back. Where's the notary? Where's the person that swears that that's your signature and they saw you sign it? It's a legal document. This decides who becomes the president, who becomes the governor, who becomes whatever. These safety measures, these constitutional measures have been dropped, disappeared, ignored, erased. That's what we're going to talk about. So bring it on, Miss Karen.
Wow, what a show.
Yeah.
Well, what we're finding is that there are several election laws, first of all. Mm-hmm. When I was the city councilor in Franklin, I was mailed a big, thick book, 8.5 by 11, right? Thick, with the wires on the binding and so forth, so they're easy to turn, all of that. All about elections. Very interesting, right? Well, we look at them and we read them, and the thing is that practice what you've been doing in habit and so forth since we came to the state of New Hampshire. This is the process we were told that you followed, and that if you were an undeclared, you could go into the ballot box on the day of election. If you decided you wanted to pull another ballot, you could certainly do that. That would be okay, right? And then you could also decide you were going to go back. Well, what we found is over the years, maybe about 3 or 4 terms ago, there were legislators who started to say at the Republican convention, we don't like this, that the undeclareds come in and can decide who's going to be our nominees. And it's a nomination process, quite honestly. And so it would be like asking the neighbor down the street to come in and look at your books and tell you how you should be spending your money. It's asking somebody else to come make the decisions for you and your family.
Correct.
Well, we are a private organization called the Republican Party. And when we go to the ballot box and at primary, we want to be able to select who is going to represent the Republican Party. Well, you don't want outsiders coming in to do that.
Correct.
So at any rate, it had not passed over the years. But this year, at the beginning of 2023, I submitted a bylaw amendment to go into the documents that tell the Republican Party how it's supposed to operate. And one of the things is, well, we don't want outsiders. We don't want those who are undeclared to come in and pull a ballot for the Republican Party.
Okay.
And so that's the way it's been, right? And I submitted this bylaw amendment. The bylaw amendment committee called me and said, we think this needs to be a resolution. So I wrote the resolution, but this little voice in the back of my mind said, let them both go through. So I did. I let them both go through. Well, came to the convention, and it eventually, after a lot of discussion, the resolution survived.
Okay.
All right. So now the law simply says that the chairman of the party should notify the Secretary of State that this is the will of the body of Republicans, right? Our chairman notified or had a meeting with the Secretary of State, and they decided that it was in violation of one of their RSAs. Which RSA, we were never told, but he did do his due diligence and notified the executive committee. However, as more and more Republicans who had been aware that this change had been made became aware, they started saying, wait a minute, I thought this had been changed, and they started calling the Secretary of State's office, and Mr. Scanlon said, no, this undeclareds can pull a Republican ballot.
Up until the last minute.
Up until the last minute, yes.
But yet, so does it actually say that?
Yeah, yes, it says they can do that. But upon further, so basically, it was the written decision, a written note to the Secretary of State that our party chairman had to do. Well, then on further investigation, we started looking at it a little bit more carefully, and it says the Secretary of State shall include on the voter instruction cards whether a party rule has been adopted which permits a person who is registered as an undeclared voter to vote in the party's primary.
Keyword primary.
No, keyword permit.
Well, yeah, but I mean in the
primary.
In the primary, right.
Well, we don't worry about it in the general election because the nominees are already there, and you're just picking which party or
but this
whichever.
Is picking
but this
the nominee.
Is the nominee for the party.
Yep.
For the private organization. So at any rate, that posed the question, where is the permit? Where is the letter of permission that was sent to the Secretary of State? Well, it turns out, and on further query, that the Secretary of State has not received such a letter.
So the chairman had not sent a letter that said that we permit the private company.
No chairman in the past.
Okay, but I mean, this one did not send a letter that would permit an undeclared person to vote in our party's primary. And then now you're looking at more investigation, and no chairman has ever sent a letter saying they allowed this.
Well, so our original premise was that we were closing the primary.
Okay.
That it was always allowed. Mm-hmm. And until we as the body decided that it wasn't allowed, that was what was going forward. But what happened is it really is the flip. And the chairman was supposed to write a letter of permission, which has never been granted.
So originally,
all of these
it's
years,
always been
all
not
of these years that the Secretary of State has been allowing undeclareds to come into the primary and pull a ballot of either party.
Right. So this would be the same for the Democrats
Right.
as it is for the Republicans.
It's never been legal. It's not been legal because there has not been a letter of permission. So this has been going on for as long as the Secretary of State has been in office that we know of, because there is no existing letter.
So here's what I'm hearing in the background and my translating and concern. So number one, the Secretary of State is appointed. We never elected them. He's appointed by the governor.
No, he's
but
not.
But he's elected by the Executive Council,
No,
not
he's
us.
not. He's
Not?
elected by the not the Republicans, by the legislature. At the first meeting of the legislature on January Wednesday, the first Wednesday in January of 2023,
okay,
or 2022 actually it was, he was standing for election.
Okay,
and the legislators, the House of Representatives of 400 members, and the 24 senators voted yes, they both voted for who they wanted to be the Secretary of State. They also vote for the Treasurer of the state.
Okay.
At the same time.
What about the AG? I know I'm digressing, but
no.
Okay.
The Attorney General is appointed by the governor and,
that's where I'm
and
messing
verified
up.
by the Executive
But
Council.
the Secretary of State is voted by the House.
The body,
by the body
of the legislators, the senators and the House of Representatives.
Wow. And so the Secretary of State for decades, potentially, has been allowing undeclared voters to pull either a Democratic or a Republican ballot, even though our party rules say the exact opposite.
Well, our party rules are mute on the whole thing. So it's not a matter of whether they say it or not. Mm-hmm. In order for the undeclared voter to be able to pull a ballot,
permission.
They have to have permission from the parties to do so.
And that's never happened.
And that's not apparently there's not a non-existent letter that says that. So this is a concern because that says that this has been going on illegally for years.
Yep.
Now, I'm not a lawyer. I don't have a law degree. I just know that I'm reading the wording in our RSAs, which is very clear.
Yep.
I mean, and sometimes you have to pull it apart a little bit to see and figure out whether there's a colon or a semicolon or a comma or whatever.
Matters.
But because those do matter. But that's what we looked at, right? So this is just one part. Now, the other part is if you look at what it says about declaring yourself as a registration, you can change your registration according to 654-34, right?
Yep, so you guys can look it up, and we'll also put it on the screen for you.
And it states that under oath or affirmation that the voter intends to affiliate with generally supports the candidates of the party with which he offers to register, right? So that says that this is under penalty of law because further down in 4, it says that, and that is excluding if it's prohibited by 4. Well, no person who is already registered to vote, whether his party membership has been previously registered or not, shall affiliate with a party or disaffiliate from a party between the first Wednesday of June, which is probably signups to run for office, and the day before the state primary. So you can't change your registration in that period of time.
No person who's already registered shall affiliate. Wow.
Or disaffiliate. You can't affiliate or disaffiliate. So this is another thing that seems to be a little bit muddied in the process, right? Mm-hmm. And so when they do that, they're saying that they're abiding by this rule, and that's all fine and dandy, right? This is something I question, because supposedly before the upcoming presidential primary, which is supposed to be sometime at the end of January, yep, maybe in February, but it's not completely official yet, that by last Friday, October 6th, your registration was supposed to be done. So that means that when it comes to primary time, you should not be allowed to change your registration. However, because of this mix-up about whether or not it was an open or a closed primary, and the Secretary of State has been saying, oh, it's open, it's open. I forgot the number. It's in the thousands. 2,000, 3,000 different Democrats have gone in, changed their registration to undeclared. Now,
why?
Why?
So you can go and pull last minute?
Now, why would just Democrats, primarily Democrats, have done this? Mm-hmm. Why? Would you?
I saw that report somewhere.
Yeah. Would you? I think I texted it to you.
I think
so. Would you
too.
Question whether or not the Democrats are supposed to be doing this, and why would just one party be doing it? It sounds a little suspicious to me.
3,542 Democrats. Oh, it just went off of there again. Come on. 3,542 Democrats switched to independent. So is that because you're leaving your party, or is that because potentially their intent is to interfere in the private Republican primary?
Correct.
Wow. That's granite rock for anybody that wants to look it up.
Yeah. So now, and to shift gears a little bit now, we go to the, as you mentioned before, the absentee ballot. Ugh. Now, the absentee ballot was a constitutional amendment that came about because we had men in the military overseas who wanted to still participate in their state's elections. And so we did, the people at the time did the right thing. The legislature proposed a constitutional amendment that changed it. And if you were sick or you were absent from your location of voting, you could, in fact, apply for an absentee ballot, right? So that makes sense, right? So when you got your absentee ballot, which comes in a little envelope, well, let's see if I have the picture here. Comes in a little envelope like this. That's what this is the current one.
Okay.
There's some things to be noted on that as well, but we'll get that in a minute. So when you got your absentee ballot and you made your application for it, you would then sign an affidavit. Now, what is an affidavit? An affidavit, according to Black's Law Dictionary, which is where? Yes, that one right there. According to that, it is, if I can find my copy so that I can actually read it properly for you. It says a statement or declaration reduced to writing and sworn to or affirmed before some officer who has the authority to administer an oath or affirmation. So that means that these are legal documents. Your vote is a legal entity, right?
Right.
So when you ask for an absentee registration, according to our New Hampshire state laws, you are supposed to sign an affidavit that says, this is the reason I'm not going to be able to vote. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to be out of the area, this is the reason, and I write this down.
Right.
And I sign it. And then at the bottom of it, there should be a witness that says, I, the undersigned witness, do hereby swear to or affirm under the penalties of voting fraud set forth below that on this day of this, on this date, the above named person, having satisfied me as to his or her identity, signed the foregoing affidavit in my presence. In my presence.
Yep.
So your absentee ballot should actually not only have the reason that you are claiming that you're not going to be able to vote in person.
Right.
You're supposed to sign that, but you're also now supposed to have your
Witnessed or notarized.
Yeah, your ballot notarized.
Yep.
That you were the one that filled it out, that you were the one that put it in the envelope, and that you are the one that signed the outside of the envelope. Then it's supposed to go into an outside envelope and be mailed, right? So now this is all fine and dandy because we have affidavits for if you were out of the area, or we have an affidavit for if you were
Sick and
ill
disabled.
and disabled, right? But last year, or the year before, when the big bad pandemic occurred, right? The legislature expanded the reasons that you could come. Your babysitter didn't show up. Your boss wouldn't let you off work. The weather was
You're afraid
inclement.
of the...
Right. But where on this nice little envelope, this nice little tidy little envelope, does it give you any place to affirm why you are claiming that you have to have this absentee ballot?
So when I read on the left side, it says, I will be absentee on election day, A, out of town, B, unable to vote in person because I'm working, C, unable to vote in person because I'm caring for children, D, voting absentee the Monday before because of weather. It was putting blizzard and weather together. And then, so multiple reasons under one, I'm absent, and no spot for you to check to affirm why you're not doing it. Number two, I'm unable to vote in person due to disability. 3, unable to vote in person due to observance of a religious commitment. 4, I'm confined to a penal institution. There is no spot on this envelope, which is on the right-hand side, where you check off why your actual reason is that you cannot attend. So this is an expanded version that was passed unconstitutionally.
Correct.
In many cases, there's states where the governor did it and he does not have the authority, where the judiciary did it and they don't have the authority. It's only the legislature that has the authority. But in no point in this, if I'm understanding correctly, was our Constitution ever amended to add in this multiple choice of why I'm not coming, and you don't have to check the box.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, but as you notice on the other side, it says that I've got my voter signature, or that I attest that I assisted this person, but nowhere is there for the legal documents that says that I witnessed this person who signed it.
So the affidavit section is gone.
It's not there. Now, what that does is that causes the moderator, which is 65950, when the moderator is supposed to, on election day, announce that the absentee ballots are being cleared, and she or he is going to start opening those outside envelopes, or the envelopes, to verify that the voter is who there, the name of the voter is on the checklist, and that the affidavit appears to be properly executed. There's not the affidavit for the reason, and there's not the affidavit for the signature. And
so that's a problem right there.
That is a huge problem, because if it's not there, then further down in 65953, the moderator is supposed to find that the absentee voter is not entitled to vote because, and he's not, the moderator is not even supposed to open the envelope
right,
at
open
that
the
point.
envelope.
Right.
That should be a red flag. This cannot be opened. It cannot be counted.
Right.
For this,
and they're
then
supposed to
going on,
mark it on the outside of the envelope, the reason why, and put it aside. And it is never supposed to be opened. It's supposed to remain exactly there.
As is. Mm-hmm.
As is. So here's something that Mr. Scanlon testified when they were affirming, what's her name? Ann Edwards. Yeah. Ann Edwards as a judge. Mr. Scanlon said, this woman has been my authority for election law for as long as I've been in office.
Wow.
So now Mr. Scanlon also is responsible for notifying our moderators and our keepers of the checklists about what their procedures are supposed to do, and they're supposed to be actually training them. Well, they do supposedly train them. However, Mr. Scanlon turned around and admitted that for as long as he's been in the office, there has not been an affidavit on the absentee ballots.
Wow.
So they have been stuffing our ballot boxes
with illegal
for 20 some odd years.
So hang on to that thought for 1 second. We're going to go to a quick break, and we're going to come back and finish this conversation because we're nowhere near where we should be. And this is really, really important for everybody to understand. So we'll be back for the second half. I'll see you in a few minutes. And welcome back to Just Jocelyn, and my guest is Karen Testerman. Welcome back, Karen.
Thank you.
We're talking about election validation, and we got a little heated there at the beginning. Well, I did, because I get excited, and I get very, very passionate is the word, and we have to stop labeling people for being angry and this. Passionate, because as Karen stated and has so convincingly shown us here, and we're going to continue with this, we have laws that are in complete opposition to another law. We're going back and forth, and this makes absolutely your mind just spin. And as voters and citizens of the state of New Hampshire, there should be no shenanigans going on. And I'm being extremely polite about that. We are talking out and out fraud. We are talking numbers of items that are interfering with our inalienable rights, with our Bill of Rights to vote and vote for who we want. When we have a Secretary of State that's sitting in his office, well, I didn't receive the letter that says you don't allow undeclared people to vote in your primary. We're being very clear about this. When it's very obvious that in our own rules and regulations, both Democrat and Republican, as far as we can tell, it doesn't say that they can. In fact, Karen had just read the part. Just to recap, do you want to read the part where it says between those two dates that you can the change of registration?
The change of registration.
Right.
So no person who is already registered to vote, whether his party membership has been previously registered or not, shall affiliate with a party or disaffiliate from a party between the first Wednesday in June and the day before the state primary election. So you could theoretically from this, and we'd have to go further investigate these RSAs, which you can do by going to Gen Court, and then you go over to where, if you go to Gen Court on your search engine, it'll bring you to the legislators page. And then if you go in, there's across the top, it says laws and rules.
Yep.
When that drop down comes down, you can go by title, and then you can go down and look for the elections, which is way down at the bottom in the 600s. So when you get down there, you can start reading through all of the election laws if you want to take the time to really do the investigation, which you should really go in and especially look at some of these, and then start looking at some of the ones that surround it.
Right.
And make sure
that one you just read was 654:34, change of registration.
Right. So, the whole thing is that we're changing our registration in our primary, But yet, if you go to 659.14, it says very clearly that the party has to give permission for an undeclared voter to vote in their primary.
Right.
Right.
And that has, upon investigation and research, has not been done. There is no such letter.
The practice has been all along that an undeclared, I mean, as long as I've been in the state of New Hampshire, the practice has always been that on primary day, you could, if you were registered as an undeclared, you could go pull in either ballot. Mm-hmm. And then on your way out, you could designate yourself as an undeclared. And they used to have to put it in an actual notebook. Whether they're still keeping the notebook or not, I don't know.
I believe they are. I know they are in my town.
Yeah, some towns they are and some towns they're not. But it begs the question of who's checking up on this and why hasn't it been, so the funny thing is this isn't the first time this particular RSA has been investigated.
Right.
But it's the first time that anybody actually noticed that it said permits, gives permission. It's been glossed over because our practice has been always that it's been allowed. So when you read it, you're reading it with that intent.
Correct.
Which is something that we have to be a little bit wary of when we're reading other things. I mean, and it's a common mistake. It's not to be. I was talking to somebody, a former legislator who used to sit on the election law committee, and she said, we discussed this, but I never saw this.
Wow.
You know, so
many eyes.
Right. Many eyes have to look at it. And it's only because this whole discussion came up about whether or not the notification was sent to the Secretary of State in the proper form. Only because that question was arose, and there were many eyes looking at it, right? That somebody said, hey, wait a minute, I just saw this.
Wow. What I find interesting is the affidavit part. And
that's from Black's Law's dictionary.
Correct. And it's a statement or declaration reduced to writing, sworn to or affirmed before an officer with authority to administer an oath or affirmation. So it says to me, so if we've got Butterfingers on our voting applications and the moderators are not ensuring that there isn't an affidavit, they removed it, but they're not even going so far as to see, is this envelope legit? Is this signature actually who they say they are? Because it does say that the moderator shall sort and count the votes. It also says that they need to make sure 100% that absentee ballot is signed and
notarized,
notarized, which it isn't, and they should never open the envelope if there's any question. But yet the envelopes are being opened, and may I say at an incorrect time, and they're being envelope is separated from the ballot. The ballot is put through the machine, so now there is no way that it can ever be questioned because the name on the ballot or lack of name and the affidavit on the ballot does not match the envelope.
Well, so here's the bigger problem, though. This is issued by the Secretary of State. Okay? The Secretary of State's office is responsible for printing all of the documents and the information that the moderators and the people who keep the checklists and the people who are working the election at the time of the election, the election tables, right? They're being instructed on what they're supposed to be doing. Well, the fact that this is now being issued by your clerk of your town or your city, and they think that they're following the instructions that come down from on high. Yeah. Right? And so when it comes down from on high, it says, here's your application. when you fill out the application, you state whatever, I can't remember even what you state on it, but you may actually say, I'm getting it because I'm going to be out of town, or I'm getting it
when you
because
apply for that absentee ballot. Yep.
I don't know if it includes all of the expansion that the legislature did a few years ago. But then when the absentee ballot is issued to you, it should have that form that either the Justice of the Peace, a notary public, a selectman, or a city councilor, the town clerk or the city clerk or the moderator, a place for them to sign to verify that you are the one who got this ballot. When you got the ballot, that it was not filled in for you.
Correct.
That it was empty. And they watched you go over and mark it. They didn't watch what you were marking, but they watched you mark
Fill in a blank form.
They verified that you were the person, that you had an identification of some sort that convinced them that you were Jocelyn Davis, or that I am Karen Testerman, and that they can now sign that they know that this is who you were. They're a witness that you did all of this, and they watched you not only sign it, but put it into the outer envelope, or the inner envelope.
Right.
And then their signature should be on it as well.
There's nothing.
But it's not even big enough to be able to do that. At minimum, it should be an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, right? It may be tiny print, but it should be at least that. And it's not.
So I've been told by a number of town clerks that they are not allowed to ask for an ID for absentee ballots, or in some states, mail-in ballots. And I have a problem with that.
I do too.
A huge problem with that. Just based on you don't know who you're sending it to. You're obviously not double checking the name, goes to the address that they haven't moved, whatever. But the bigger problem for me is here I am as a ballot clerk demanding people in front of me who've been verified as they came in, that are being verified on the list, have to still give me their voter ID, which I'm perfectly fine with. But how come absentee ballot people do not have to show any form of ID? And on top of it, we've got the problem of no notary, no affidavit, no nothing. So we don't know who any of these people are.
I've got another one, though.
Oh, God. My head's going to explode.
Are you ready for this one?
Okay.
My city clerk tells me that, in fact, you can register to vote by mail.
What?
How? I know. That one totally blew me away. When I registered in the state of New Hampshire the first time to vote in the state, I went to my town hall. I had to produce either my birth certificate, a passport, or a government-issued ID, my driver's license, and preferably a New Hampshire driver's license, or my, in my case, it was military ID, right? That has my picture on it, that verifies that I am who I am. Well, that particular issue has been very
glossed over.
Glossed over.
Plus,
and so
we had to bring a bill.
Yes,
we had to bring a bill with the address on it.
Right, you had to have some form that said either your something that had your name on it, that had the address that you're claiming that that you're an inhabitant of, although they've muddied that with domicile and resident, right? But the whole thing is that you had to verify that the address that you were using to register to vote was your address. Now, additionally, and this is, thank you, Marilyn Todd, thank you, Brenda Town, thank you, Al Brandino, all of these different people who have been investigating the HAVA law, the Help America Vote Act law, which says that when a change of address form has been completed and sent to the post office, the U.S. Postal Service, that then those lists do come out, and the state can get them from the post office. Anybody can get them, actually. And because it's part of the public record, then you can now use that, and you're supposed to use that, according to even our New Hampshire RSAs,
Yep.
that you're supposed to now take that name
And clean up your voter
remove
list.
it from the voter list.
Yep.
Okay, so I asked Brenda Town, because she's been working on this, for the list for my community, right? She sends it to me. I find out what wards are where and all that, and I send it off to my clerks. Now, the Secretary of State's already sent them a letter back in June or July that this was required, right? So I sent it off because there are 64,000 names that are still on a spot check on the voter rolls in New Hampshire.
Wow, 64,000.
64,000. And so different people, just different residents have been saying, hey, I want to get in touch with my town election personnel, and I want to make sure that they're doing this and that they're cleaning up our rolls. So, because this is also an avenue for vote fraud to occur. So, one of my moderators wrote back and said, well, this is a very tedious job, and it takes time for it to get done. Now, the last time I checked, you could have it all on an Excel spreadsheet, and if I'm not mistaken, this is something that Hollis has been going through, and Mr. Fulcino has been working diligently, and he said they offered to help them set up the Excel spreadsheet and so forth. And when I was explaining this to one of my former state reps, she said, it's easy. All you do is you take the Excel spreadsheet, you look up the name, you go delete. Look up the name, delete. She said it shouldn't take them more than 2 hours to do 100 and 150 names. But yet my moderator told me
it's tedious
and time consuming. Yeah. And I'm only asking him at the end of September to do this, right? He's had the notification since June.
Correct. So here we go again, reminiscent of, kick the can down the road and then whine when you don't have enough time, but yet that's your job. So it removes people that have passed, have died. It removes people that have moved out of town. It cleans up the voter rolls. It's very, very important that we have clean voter roll lists,
right,
and not excess people.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's finish up with, so this all came about because of the letter that was not sent by the Republican chairman
right,
to the Secretary of State. So Chris Ager did not send it to Scanlon, Mr. Scanlon, Dave Scanlon.
Correct.
So
he had a meeting instead.
They had a meeting instead.
He didn't follow, in other words, he did not follow the RSA.
And send the letter.
And
or
send the letter. Because it
permission.
says it's supposed to be a written notification, right?
Not a
And
Twitter
Mr.
chat.
Scanlon is quite honest and right in saying, well, I haven't received a letter, so
Yep.
I can't.
I can't. Well, here's my
enforce
other
it.
question. So I'm hearing, let me get into this little part here.
Oh, the one
that I
back
gave
here?
You.
Yeah,
What did I do with that?
this one. This one?
Yes. Trying to find that.
Well, you can take mine.
Can I borrow yours? Okay.
Oh, yeah, please do.
So, a good friend of ours who is a legislator took the bull by the horns, because she does, and said to the chairman, no one seems to care. No one seems to notice that these primaries are not elections, which is actually from the Granite Crock, and so not subject to election laws. You brought this up to me. So she went right to the horse's mouth and went to the chairperson and said, your job is to send a letter, a notification giving permission, or not giving permission, in this case, for undeclareds to change their party affiliation on the day of the primary. He didn't do it, so she pushed him to do it. Allegedly he did it, but here's the rub for me. Yes, let me read this to her. I spoke to Chris yesterday and last night a few times. The resolution was submitted to the Secretary of State yesterday, meaning Wednesday. I told him we need an official response from the state, which I know is going to be something like, so the Secretary of State's going to say it violates something, which it doesn't. Working on this, I believe this is important. We need to close the primaries for both parties in the state of New Hampshire. This is extremely important. This is a battle that needs to go today.
But the other side of it is,
Yeah.
has either party ever submitted a letter to the Secretary of State
Apparently not.
stating that they give permission for an undeclared to vote in their primary? And as far as the Republicans are concerned, the New Hampshire Grand Old Party, GOP, that letter doesn't exist as far as the Secretary of State is concerned, because he's notified others through other correspondence that he cannot find one.
Right. Which means
So-
he's been allowing undeclared
Not just
voters.
him, but over the years,
Right.
the previous Secretary of State, this has been a common practice. It's in violation of the state law. Now what do we do? Who is responsible for this? And are they going to correct it before the next primary?
Well, they should, or we should not have a next primary or a next election, because it seems to me that this unelected person by us, but elected by the legislature, as you corrected me, is making decisions for private parties, which directly affects you and me. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't have that authority.
Well-
and we've now discovered them with their pants down.
Right. Well, and the other part of it being too, that this isn't the only area. We've now uncovered the absentee ballot.
Correct.
We've also uncovered the fact that for the absentee ballot, there should be an affidavit for your reason for not being there
And your signature.
and your signature.
Well, try and go to court and not have your affidavit notarized and sanitized and itemized, whatever eyes you want to put on it. So why is this any less? Because they're actually mocking us. They are mocking the whole voting procedures. They're making Mickeys, and idiots out of us. Oh, well, I'm just going to allow.
So-
and this is not picking on undeclareds, but you want to vote in a primary, you better be in that party and not the day before, the day after, because that really comes across as some kind of dirty stuff that you're pulling.
Right. Well, and so here's the other part of this. You did mention that this legislator actually got on board and dogged him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But she wasn't the only one.
Correct.
She wasn't. So
Hundreds of emails were received.
Hundreds of emails, phone calls, and texts
Good.
were received.
Yep, thank you for bringing that
he
up.
finally decided that maybe he ought to, because up until that time, despite the fact that I had written him
You had.
several letters, that it was an issue at the very beginning of the year.
And it was voted on at the beginning of the year.
Yes, it was voted on. But I also, when this started to come about, because another legislator contacted me and said, my constituents are complaining about this, what can we do? Will you write a letter to Chris Agert and ask him to please submit the letter and clarify this? And he pushed back, and he pushed back, and he pushed back until hundreds of phone calls, emails, and texts
Good.
arrived.
Yep.
So you, the people, have power, but you have to be involved. It's the individual who must pick up the torch at that point and carry it forward, because one person doesn't make near as much noise
As a thousand.
hundreds or thousands.
And we need it to be thousands, because this is happening in every aspect of our world. This is just the voting, and I don't mean just as to put it down, because this is huge. But when someone else is taking away your decision making as to who you want for a president, who you want for a vice president, who you want for a governor, who you want for
selectmen.
Selectmen,
Or
counselor.
dog catcher.
Well, school boards are a big
or
one.
library trustee.
Don't even get me started
So
on
I
that
mean,
one.
these are all important places. And the other thing is that we get this. Well, you know, those town offices. Those are nonpartisan. They're all nonpartisan, folks. Let's face it.
Correct.
Whatever party you're voting for, they're taking forward their basic principles, yes, and maybe some of their policies, but in the end, they're representing everyone.
So that I can attest that that's not happening. That our federal representatives in this state are Democrats, and they do not represent me. And I don't know anybody in the Republican Party that they even come this close to even having a conversation with us. It's their way or the highway. And it probably happens the same way on the other side, but I don't think quite as much. But let's call it for what it is. No matter what your party is and you're elected, you're supposed to represent all of us, and that is not happening. We have private beliefs and desires going forward, and basically to heck with us. We pay the salaries.
But the
We're
bottom
ones.
line is that we've got a state constitution, which is the law of the land.
Correct.
And we have common law, which is that we, the people, designed and had this contract with the government.
Correct.
Which
State
is
government.
our legislators, our judges, and our executives. Right? Those three people make up the government for us. We tell them what they are allowed to do.
Correct.
And they are supposed to protect our rights as God-given rights. And unless we, the people, have given them permission to make a law that changes, they're not really supposed to do that. They're not supposed to be willy-nilly coming up with
Correct.
anything in the world.
Just like
they're
shouldn't-
supposed to be hearing the concerns of the people and their remonstrances and their grievances.
Right, redress of grievance, which they've chosen to, well, it's not convenient.
It's fallen out of favor.
It's fallen out of favor. Too bad. Guess what? You're going to fall out of something. It's going to be out of our favor. You're going to fall out of office. So I want to thank you so much for bringing this forward. This is so important that people are looking to find out why we have no voice. What has gone wrong? Here's a basic one, the primary. You have no say because the Secretary of State has decided, secretaries of states have decided that they get to make the rules and, you know, to heck with what the fallout is.
Well, they should at least be instructing our election officials what they're supposed to be doing, what the process is, and they should be making sure that they are complying with the RSAs that they throw into our faces whenever they don't want to do something that we're asking them to do that is really legitimate for them to do it, right?
Yeah. So. Awesome. Well, thank you, Karen. I can't wait to have you back on our next blazing event that comes up. So thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn.
We'll see you next time. We'll put up the different numbers and the pages for you so you can look them up yourself, that it really is legit. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.